Today is Tuesday the 21st of February. In Battle Drill Devotionals this week, we examine a true mountaintop experience and consider what Jesus' divinity means for us today. We turn to our passage for this week, Matthew chapter 17 and verses 1 to 9, which today we're reading from the New International Version. The Transfiguration. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as the light. Just then there appeared before him Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said, "don't be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Amen. Have you ever wondered if the disciple Peter was a salvationist? He was certainly an activist. He always wanted to do something, to say something, to act on what Jesus was teaching him. Peter has just experienced the most spiritual mountaintop experience he has ever had in his life. His teacher, Jesus, whom he has recently declared as the Messiah, the Son of the living God, has just proved it to him by being transformed, so that his face shone like the sun and his clothes were as white as light. And what's Peter's response? "I must do something. I know, Jesus, shall I build these 3 shelters as a memorial?" Poor Peter had missed the point, as we so often do. He had the right idea about Jesus, but his timing was off. There's a time to act, but there's also a time to simply worship and adore. The heart of worship is surrender. Arch-activist General William Booth had it right when he said, "The greatness of a man's power is the measure of his surrender." And what's his response? "I must do something. I know, Jesus. Shall I build these 3 shelters as a memorial?" Poor Peter had missed the point, as we so often do. He had the right idea about Jesus, but his timing was off. There's a time to act, but there's also a time to simply worship and adore. The heart of worship is surrender. Arch-activist General William Booth had it right when he said, "The greatness of a man's power is the measure of his surrender." Peter wanted to please Jesus. He wanted to do something to win his approval. But so often the Bible teaches us that rather than trying, rather than acting, rather than doing, what Jesus wants us to do is to submit, to obey, to surrender, to stop doing, and be what he wants us to be. Let's be ready to say yes, Lord, to whatever Jesus asks of us today, whether it's being still, worshipping and learning from him, or whether it's a specific action. As you think about that today, you might want to use this question to help you reflect. What might you need to stop doing today in order to be with Jesus? And I look forward to seeing you again soon on Battle Drill Devotionals.